everyone, and welcome back to another fantastic episode of The Lion's Den. I'm your host, Venezia Leone, and today I sat down with Jonathan Clark, CEO of Community Solutions by Design, an architecture and engineering firm that helps bring complex development projects from concept to reality. In this episode, Jonathan pulls back the curtain on what really goes into delivering major projects, from affordable housing developments to large scale public infrastructure and stadium projects. We talk about the hundreds of stakeholders involved, why so many projects get delayed or fail altogether, and how the best developers think about risk, funding, team building, and community engagement from day one. Jonathan also shares his perspective on what separates successful projects from unsuccessful ones, why understanding the needs of a community matters more than most people realize, and how great design is ultimately less about buildings and more about people. Whether you're a business owner, developer, entrepreneur, or someone who's ever wondered what actually happens before construction crews break ground, this conversation is packed with practical insights on leadership, execution, and turning big ideas into reality. Hope you enjoy. Hey, Jonathan. So nice to have you on the Lion's Den today.
Yeah, Venezia, I appreciate it. It's been awesome getting connected with you, and I'm excited about the show today.
Yeah, let's get the listeners some good information. So I think when most people hear architecture, engineering, they think, design, drawings, buildings, wireframes, things like that. But it seems like your role goes a lot deeper into actually getting the projects executed. So I'd love to just hear a little bit about how you sort of ended up in this space and what you actually do as a CEO.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I started our business in 2018, right before the COVID era. I started with a group of actually colleagues from university that a couple of decades ago that we were all together. Um, I ended up getting a license in architecture and both engineering and assumed what's called the principal position of a design firm. And what I quickly learned is it's way more than just like the drawings themselves. It's more so about being client facing, helping to originate projects, helping to help other entrepreneurs secure funding, deal with, or I don't want to use the word deal, I'll say collaborate with, cities and municipalities and counties. There's just so much that goes into a project that you experience on the back end once it's finished as an end user, versus all of the planning, the connectivity between the different stakeholders in the community, that has to happen years before you actually experience it as an end user.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so in terms of sort of your boots on the ground, how
Mhm.
does your role how has your role sort of evolved into what it is today, which is taking that idea or taking that project from idea to construction?
Yeah, I mean, so just from the beginning of I would say like a designer or engineer, we're very technical people. We're knee deep in the different aspects and the details of the project in terms of how the building or the project has to relate and coordinate to itself. Let alone to the people and the end users and the stakeholders and the municipalities, but just the project in itself, we're very integrated in like what's happening. um, we go from that to actually the project starts in the construction phase, and so we're we're very active in collaborating with the general contractor, and answering a lot of questions, solving problems on site that just because you draw something one way, sometimes it doesn't always end up being able to be built like that, due to circumstances that may be beyond our control. And so we spend a lot of time solving problems on within the drawings, but then actually helping to solve problems on the site. But then the bigger piece of that, as an engineer or architect, as they matriculate and grow, within their craft, they again become more client facing. So now it's about customer service. It's about the customer experience throughout the design journey. So 80% of what I do is more so helping them understand what we're doing, helping them understand why we're doing it, kind of expressing our value in helping them to make educated decisions. And only really about 20% of what I do is the actual technical design. And so that part lights me up. We get a chance to help, people realize the important decisions that they have to make, and let them know that there's a professional available that can help them think through all the possible solutions and pick what's best for them and what's best for the project.
Yeah. It's really interesting to think about how you're having a random conversation with someone and like in what they describe, you have to apply that to the
Mhm.
design of a building or a, construction. Like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about that. I'm like, oh yeah, with a software thing, people tell you, oh, I don't like this button and you move that button. But like for something that's a build, you know what I mean? You got to be like, no, people want this here. People are actually going to use this space this way. Oh, but you want to
Hmm.
gather in this, like, um, so I'm a little bit interested in
Yeah.
some of the key players that are involved in what you're saying. Like, and I sort of wonder this even as I'm just walking in New York and like looking at like literally just like
Yeah.
looking at construction sites. So talk to me a
Mm.
little bit about maybe just sort of walk me through like a project and sort of
Mm.
start to finish, and
Yeah.
then maybe some of the biggest like areas where you see projects start to fall apart, or like some of the biggest
Mhm.
areas where you think, oh, this is where we're adding the most value because this
Yeah.
stakeholder typically needs the most X, Y, and
Hmm.
Z.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have a sort of a twofold answer to that. The first part is there are hundreds, if not, thousands of people that ultimately get involved with the
Wow.
project, depending on the scale. Um, there's a very large project in Tennessee right now. We're doing the Titan Stadium along with other designers, and there's 27 firms on that 27 design firms on that one project. And so um, to your point, it really starts with a developer. Like it starts with, and a developer could be an individual, it could be an institution, it can even be a municipality, right? It really starts with someone that has like a vision for a need. And it could be mission driven, it could be profit driven, there'd be many reasons why, someone would want to develop a project. But um, it starts with that person or entity. Then it moves into they have to what's called secure the capital stack, and that's their own equity. That's uh, limited partner investors. That's senior debt from institutional banks. It could be what they call mezzanine debt from other institutions. So like they go through this phase of idealizing a project, stating and helping to uh, articulate why it's needed, why it's important, and then how the actual finances will work of you know people being able to get their return on investment, stabilizing the project, and it being this like long term, very successful project. So it starts there. Then typically it goes into, well, I have to put the team together, the professionals that can do the design, that can do the implementation, the construction, etc. So then it becomes like the architecture, engineering, and general contractor team. And then even within the general contractor team, there's what you call trade partners or trade subcontractors. So you got your specialty people. So you got the people that install the HVAC and the people that install your electrical systems. And so like that's several groups of people underneath the general contractor umbrella. So by the time you like go through a project, like I said, hundreds to thousands of people touch this one project from planning, from funding to design to construction, and then the end user, themselves.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
find that you work like it's sort of a um, partnership or like word of mouth sort of industry where
Mm.
once you have good connections with those contractors or that developer or things like that, you have a lot of sort of repeat business and
Mhm.
repeat working, or do you have you found like you really have to source them from everywhere all the time and you're sort of
Mm.
constantly building new connections?
Yeah, I think so. I think this goes into the second part of the other question. I'll present an answer to, kind of like when do we get involved and how do we get involved. Of course, this is just my personal opinion. Word of mouth is, and I think will always be the highest return on investment in terms of like quote unquote marketing or reputation and brand and things like that. we've gotten a lot of opportunity just from what I like to call goodwill. We're great people that do great work and want to really help the community, and our heart is in what we do. So you put out a lot of goodwill and you get it back. So I think that for us, we we get involved at the design stage, of course, but also sometimes it can be a lot earlier. And so what we do, or what we facilitate in that part, is more of a consultancy role, advisory role, um, helping what the industry call emerging developers. And so these are developers not necessarily young in age, but sometimes young in experience, or the amount of projects or types of projects they've done, but they want to grow into a much larger, maybe even an institutional type developer. And so there's some common things that we see, and we try to help them avoid those things and come up with solutions so that their project um, doesn't fall to the wayside. Because the developers, I don't think people realize this. They probably put in the most amount of time, because they start with the vision, and then like they don't realize their profits until like maybe the project's over, or a year or two, when the project has stabilized financially. So they're the biggest risk out of anybody. And so we can help save them time, energy, and money on the front end, to try to make as many of their endeavors successful as possible. It makes the whole ecosystem work. So if the developer's successful, that's more projects for me, that's more projects for the general contractor, et cetera. And it just keeps going like that.
Yeah. And it makes
Yeah.
sense that if you had, like, let's say, for example, there's a new developer who wants to build a new stadium somewhere, and they
Hmm.
know that Community Solutions by Design just built this new Titan stadium, right? Then like you would be maybe pulled in a little bit earlier on the project because of your experience in that entire
Yeah.
like end-to-end
Yeah.
build.
Yeah, so there's definitely levels to it. I would say, I'd say the goodwill part of it, of people just know, like, and trust you, and they want to do business with you. And so it really depends on, like, are you really ingrained in that community? Are you really a part of that industry? It's sort of like, are you top of mind?
Yeah.
And those are usually the individuals and companies and people that get the most touches. It's kind of like, you're in the right place at the right time, and you're meeting the right people. So I think, just this is just not this industry, but I think in business in general, the more people know who you are, they know what you do, they know your passion about about what you do, and it could be connected to mission driven type things that put you around those people in that industry so much that, like, you become the go to person for whatever that opportunity and project is. And so there's several ways that this can play out. Like, like I said, it could be, you could be just uh, a niche type of design firm where this is all we do, or you're very entrenched into the community or the area or the region that you work in, so you're just highly visible in that area. And it could be a referral. It could be, we've worked with another business before. They had somebody else reach out and say, hey, do you know someone who can help me with this? And our name comes up. So there's several ways it can happen, but I would say the biggest thing is just being very authentic and truthful and honest, and very passionate about the type of work that you do, and the region that you work in will help you create those opportunities naturally.
Yeah. It sort of makes sense that um, even in an industry so sort of hands-on and project based, you would still see that similar pattern of, hey, if you're who you are and you're doing
Hmm.
good honest work, like you're going to be rewarded with
Yeah.
getting that job you want, getting that project you want, getting that promotion, right? Like it's all sort of about
Hmm.
representing yourself well. So I really want to dive into some of the like nitty gritty of, sort of like how you evaluate these things, and like when do projects fall apart and how do you fix it and all this sort of thing. So I want to start with maybe at the beginning. What are some decisions that matter like way more than people realize up front when you're trying to build a successful project?
Yeah. So when we are assisting developers, and we're a part of the development team actually through our advisory services, we often find that there's a couple things that are no matter where you go. Site selection is always a big one, and well, site selection, the actual development team itself, in terms of who's on the team. The strength of the team also helps a lot of times with the funding piece of it, because when you're asking other people to join you in a certain mission, they want to know that they're whatever they're investing in is being stewarded by people who know what they're doing and they've had the experience and those sorts of things. And then the other piece I would say is just the knowledge of the region. So I've worked with developers who are, I would, quote unquote, say out of town, right? And then I've worked with some developers that are more regional, more local. But I think it's like what I'm trying to say, the vernacular of the region, and that's an architectural term, but it really means like you really know what the community needs.
Mm.
You don't come in and you just try to put something there as a project just because it may pencil and work well for financials. That can't be the only reason. In some places, it has to be more of the community understands it, they feel a part of it, they need it, they want it, like those types of things. Yeah, those are like usually the couple of things that I see that always come up.
Yeah. And that's interesting on the community piece. Like I'm
Hmm.
sort of thinking through how you would build that skill set. Like if you're somebody who
Hmm.
wants to get into this space or something like that. Do you think that you learn that by sort of just being a member of that community and sort of understanding, oh, no one has this, third space.
Hmm.
Or oh, there's no music venues here. Oh,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
no, you know what I mean? Like, do you sort of
yeah.
just get that vibe from like the people there and
Um,
word of mouth?
yeah, some of it is your familiarity with the region just by being close to it. Um, the more I would say, the more official way would be talking to the economic development departments and the different people that their job, right, commissioners, economic development people, their job is to bring business and create economic equity for everybody in that community in that region. And so if you go to enough public events and you get to know
Mm,
people and you follow the news and like all these types of things,
yeah.
it becomes a little bit second nature, and it's really not that hard to find out what's lacking or what's needed in a community. And so I think that shows the individuals of that community that you do have an interest of assisting them in a way that is going to be intrusive of their thoughts, needs, desires, wants, and not just this is just a project that is here to make money type thing.
Yeah, it
Um,
looks shiny.
yeah, yeah, it's the new shiny object in the community. And so like as an architect, as an engineer, as a consultant advisor, those are the type of developers I love to do projects with, and we go the extra mile to like really make it work, um, especially if it's a region that we're in, or we've have affiliation with. It makes for an overall good project.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned that the team is important,
Hmm.
which makes sense, right? That's true for any execution. But I'd love to hear some insight from you about how do you know if you have the right team around a project, and maybe even in the reverse, if it's easier to answer, like what are some red flags where you
Yeah.
sort of see like, oh, that team is going to slow this project down, or that team's not going to
Mhm.
execute to the standard that
Yeah.
the investors would want.
Yeah, that one, I don't think there's like a official answer on that, but my perspective is if I see a development team that there's there's only a few people trying to do a lot, wear a lot of different hats, that usually is a red flag. Um, it's I would put it this way: I've learned over time that you know do what you're great at, and what you're not great at, that's what you have other team members for. And so I've come up with just my own thing about maybe why that happens. Sometimes that may be the development teams, trying to stay small so that they don't over quote unquote overstaff the team as far as like the financials, and I get that. Or it could be that they're in a new region and maybe they don't have the connections or the network they need to have more of the right people on the team, and so they may take on some of these ventures as is. And so you see that sometimes, especially with emerging developers. It's development is really, it's like everything else. It's a trust thing. It's you're in bed with someone or team or whatever for many years, and so a lot of it has to start with trust first. But once that's built, and once enough connections and things are made, I've seen development teams grow. And we of course grow with them. Even ourselves, um, we're full in-house design firm, but if there is something special about this project, then we're going to go through our network, bring on a specialty type firm that can help us, because all of it is about mitigating risk and not trying to consume more of the pie than necessary. There's
Mhm.
there's there's enough to go around, and there's no need to try to consume more pie than what you're actually able to eat.
I like that. It's a very,
Yeah.
very humble leadership thing. So
Mm.
something I just have a genuine question on is like, how long is the sort of sales cycle in terms of you hear about a project and you're the chosen or one of
Mm.
the 42 design firms, and then
Yeah.
how long is like, again, on average, and then
Yeah.
how long is the typical like project that you guys are working on?
Yeah. I mean, of course, it depends on the project. For the really big ones, uh, development projects, public projects, those have quite a timeline on them. From the time the project is in concept, like from the development team, and maybe say the city, county, municipality, the planning phase for that could take a few years. Like it could
Wow.
be 1, 2, or 3 years,
Wow.
because there's just so much that has to be in line for this to work properly. So there has to be agreement and alignment, right, between the developer and the authority having jurisdiction, or the city or county. Comprehensive plans. Cities have master plans, and so like it has to be in accordance to the master plan. There's all these like zoning meetings that
Wow.
have to happen, and community meetings that have to happen, and like sometimes that stuff can take 1, 2, 3 years, even before you even get to a very significant part in your project. But a lot of the public is not aware that that stuff is happening most of the time. Um, and then for us, say it gets to the point where it's a go in the city or in the county, and now the developer is looking for like a full blown design team, for an example. That could be a few months of working through and coming up with the right teaming partner and things like that. And then
Wow.
the design itself can range anywhere between 9 and 18 months, depending on
Wow.
how big the project is. And then of course the construction is another 2, 3 years, whatever the construction timelines is. So like literally a very large project like the Titan Stadium. I mean it's a lot. Like the construction, 2, 3 years, the designs 2 years, the planning and everything prior to that was probably another 2, 3 years. So it can be a long time.
Oh
And
my
so
God.
yeah, and so that's why the developments are very that it has to be done very strategically, very transparent, and in a way that builds trust amongst the team themselves, along with the community, but absolutely the team itself.
Yeah.
Any tension in the team, and it shows to the outside, on the project.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting. I
yeah,
now I understand when I see signs that are like new thing coming,
yeah, and
2045, and I'm always
yeah,
like,
yeah.
wow, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the sign goes up, and then like you don't see any construction for the next 5 years. Yeah,
But now I know it's a team of you in a room who's
yeah,
like designing everything and doing meetings and all that.
yeah.
So one of the things that I think like you are really good at based on what I've learned about you is that a lot of projects get stuck, and it
Hmm.
seems like like something you're good at that's in your wheelhouse is getting projects unstuck. So I'd love to learn a little bit about you in terms of like, what does that mean when we say
Hmm.
stuck? Is it funding? Is it team issues? Is it, these meetings you're talking about? And how do you get
Hmm.
in there and unstick whatever is going on effectively?
Yeah, it could be all three of what you mentioned. It could be the funding, and not and I'll say this: it's not that the funding doesn't exist. There's enough to go around. It's that the project has to make enough sense for all the parties involved, and so it has to make sense for the construction costs. It has to make sense for the profit and things like that once the project's built and it's stabilized and all these things like that. So, a lot of what we do, for example, and these are easier concepts to understand. It's like affordable housing, senior living, those types of multifamily residential. You have certain rent rates that you're building the project for. So there's a certain amount of income the project's going to bring in on an annual basis, monthly basis, and it has to make sense for if you're taking on debt, right, to be able to debt service as a developer. That's a word, debt service. Um, and so like if as an architect, if there's a way we could decrease construction costs through our design concepts, like
Mm,
those are that's like something that affects the project early on. And then with the team, right, if there's specialty team members that need to be involved because it's there's some value added to that helps reduce risk, then the lending piece gets it gets much easier also. Um, and then of course, like on our end, the other two things I would say is like the site selection. So when a developer picks a site, you have to go through environmental. It has to go through an environmental screening. Like you can't build in wetlands and flood zones and all stuff like that. And that like even though you buy a piece of property doesn't mean you automatically have the rights to build on all of it. And so like
mm,
so we help go through that process, find out what's buildable and find out how can we um, meet the goal or the target of the project with the remaining space, right? That includes the building itself, the parking, the outdoor experience, like all of those things. It's connectivity to the surrounding community. And then sometimes even the zoning part of that. So zoning is more of a administrative thing. It's kind of when cities tell you, well, we want the building to look like this. It can only be this tall. It can only be this big. And so if the development project, in order to make it profitable, has to go outside of the zoning, then we have to work through variances, and it's a lot of like public engagement and meetings and stuff like that. So it could take some time, and if those meetings are unsuccessful, then uh, that's a problem for the project, right? And so we try to help deal with that. And then on the other end, on the back end, of course, is like I said, going through the design aspect of how can we design this in such a way where it's aesthetically pleasing, it gets through permits, the permitting departments quickly. There's there's I've had horror stories, and there's some permits that take 6, 9, 12 months, which is crazy. But we're trying to put enough information on the drawings and things like that it's very coordinated for construction, but then it also it's very readable and understandable to someone who has to review it, right, and approve it. So like there's this whole um, connection to the city or county that like we can be the liaison and the face of that. There's this connection to the general contractor of like, how do we get construction costs down and design it and build it in such a way where it can be done quickly, or as quick as it can safely be done uh, with the sustaining quality. And then on the front end, it's like, well, we're working with the developer. How can we make sure you have successful um, zoning and successful, site selection, and how can we help you alleviate risk when it comes to going out to your funding partners? Like, what is it that we can do that they feel that warm and fuzzy feeling, right? Of
mm.
okay, this is a great project that I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, type thing. So that's where we play in this whole space of this construction and design and development industry.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, all of that sort of supports the statement that you said at the beginning, which is like, if you are a member of that community or if you're knowledgeable about that community, you're going to be so much better at executing a project there, because all of those things that you said, the zoning, the design, the outdoor experience, like all those things, it's like, okay, well, if you understand what the community needs and wants, then you're going to be able to design
Yeah.
those way more effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. it's funny. I say this. It's when I first got into architecture and design, I used to think architecture was about like the building itself, and it is. But what I've learned over time is architecture is really about people. Because if the people can't or don't relate to the architecture never getting built.
I really like that. I felt that for the first time with oh, I'm gonna blank, but it's in Barcelona. It's called like
Hmm.
Casa something, and anyway, it's by Gaudi, and it was one of
Mm.
those buildings where like I literally stood in front of it, and I was just like, this building makes me feel something. Like, I'm gonna
Yeah,
go inside. I want to like experience it, and
yeah,
that makes so much sense, especially for buildings that are community based, and are
exactly.
the goal is to drive people in to have a shared common
Hmm.
experience of sports or music or whatever, even a meeting room.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
that like building and designing with that in mind would, yeah, create an awesome thing. So last question,
Mhm.
for anyone listening who sort of either has a project in mind or maybe already has something in motion, when do you recommend that people bring someone like you in to their project?
Yeah, that's great. Another great question. So there's I would say there's two times. There, I'll put it this to you this way. There's a preferred time. There's the standard time, and then there's the, oh no, we have no choice but to get them involved time. So
Yep.
so yeah. So the standard time, right, is usually when you have if you're a developer or a small business, it doesn't matter, right? You have a project, you have an idea, you have the funding together, and it's like I have everything together. I need design support, to get this thing across the finish line and to realize or actualize the idea and thought concept that I have in my head. That's we get calls like that all the time. There's the oh no, I waited too long, and
I
or
started this
uh,
project already.
yeah, or yeah, like I have way too many issues that I can't solve myself now, and I have to get the architect involved. So that happens also, and this usually is done. We've gotten calls, for example, projects that they can't get a permit. Unfortunately, they may have worked with a different firm or try to do some things themselves, and they just can't get the permit to be issued. And so we'll come in and help them to resolve that particular issues or set of issues with their project, and then they'll get successfully get a permit, and then they can go on to building and construction. So that's we don't. We wish that didn't happen necessarily, because that's a bad experience for the client. We don't want them to have that type of bad experience. But again, it happens, and we get those calls and we help resolve them. Well, when we prefer to be involved is at the beginning. And the standard, what I mentioned earlier, we, as an architect in a design firm, we would come in with a standard design, fee investment that the client would pay. And it's usually somewhat of the sort of a percentage of the construction or a certain cost per square foot. Firms do it differently depending on how they run their business. What we prefer to do is, we've been doing this for quite some time, is, if, say for an example, is if it's a developer or a small business owner in the beginning or something like that, we would actually take some of our fees and defer it into the deal. Because what you'll find, and I can elaborate this on another podcast, but what you'll find is, a lot of, especially the emerging developers, they have issues with the soft cost up front. So the soft cost is the cost that's paid to the consultants and the designers and things like that to get enough information to complete the funding, like the full funding of the project, the capital stack. And so, to combat that, what we've been doing is trying to be partners in the deal by deferring some of our fee that we would typically have into the deal. And what that allows us to do is become more invested in the beginning, help come up with concepts and things like that that will speak to the investors and the senior debt partners that, hey, here's the developer has an idea. Here's some actual renderings, drawings, floor plans, like, whatever's
Mhm.
needed, site plans, so that they can actually capture the total capital stack that then will lead to, the total design package being completed into the construction part. So we prefer to be brought in there, not only because uh, that gives us more time to be intimate with the project, but we can actually help save cost earlier from that advisory slash consultant standpoint, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it sounds like, again, you guys offer a breadth of help along the way, so it
Mhm.
makes sense the earlier the better. Well, Jonathan, it was so great to have you on the Lions Den. I know I learned a lot about project construction and all of that, and yeah, really appreciate your expertise.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this. I hope I added some value, and I look forward to helping those out there that are thinking about any development project.
Absolutely.